1. So, a house I had lived in from the age of 9 to about 16 was haunted, I'm fairly sure. These things happen all the time. I always felt watched when I was on the second floor. Noises would come from nowhere up there, and my brother's room always just felt off. He was about 5 or 6 at the time, and through the course of the whole time we lived there, he would flat out refuse to sleep in his room. He'd always wake up at night and go downstairs wailing. Not to mention, when we moved in, my parents said that 666 was painted on my bedroom wall, and no matter how many coats of pink paint they put over it, it still bled through like it was freshly painted there, so that's cool too. So the dreams. I used to argue that it was just the fact that I lived there during such a formative chunk of life, so my background and dreams would always be set there. The thing is, whenever I'm dreaming of that place, I'm always searching for someone or something. I had a dog that died while we lived there, and sometimes I dream that I'm trying to find her, though I have the knowledge she's gone, and that she's out in our yard, rotting. I don't know why. If I'm not searching for her, I'm making my way to the stairs that lead to the second floor. We had a blanket blocking the stairway because we used it so little that my parents didn't want all of our heat to go upstairs and leave us cold. With each dream, I'm getting closer to the blanket. The dread is in my stomach. Like I know the minute I move it that someone will be at the top of the stairs looking down at me. I finally reached the blanket, and to my relief, when I moved it, nobody was there. But the relief was short because the very last dream I've had is that I move the blanket, and the door to my bedroom, you can see about half of the door from the bottom of the stairs, slowly begins to open. I haven't seen who or what is opening the door, and honestly, I'm scared to see. I don't know why I'm having these dreams. They're so realistic and exactly the same, each with me going a bit further. Perhaps the scariest part of it all is that I'm not even scared of that house anymore. I miss it. I feel so much homesickness for it now. I used to never want to go back once I had moved out. I'm beginning to have thoughts of asking the landlords to let me know when it's vacant again so I can have it. And I feel almost jealous that people are living in it right now. I don't even live in that town anymore. I don't know if anyone will take this seriously or even knows why I feel this way or am having these dreams. But anyone else have something similar happen to them? What do I do? Just to clarify, these dreams usually happen with me getting closer to the stairs. Like one ended when I was at the doorway to the kitchen. The next ended when I had made it to the middle of the kitchen. The next ended when I had made it to the exit of the kitchen, etc. With the whole build-up along the way being exactly the same as the dreams before it. The last dream I had, I was seeing my bedroom door from up those stairs slowly open on its own. So these are a sequence of dreams that just brings me slowly closer to this. I don't know, this encounter that I'm dreading. 2. Before I start, let me explain what a hypnagogic hallucination is. This is a type of hallucination that occurs as you're falling asleep. As said by Google, they can be visual, auditory, or sensory in nature, or all three at the same time. Now you might be wondering, how is this paranormal? Well, that's where the story gets interesting, because I'm not sure if this is hypnagogic or paranormal. About 9 months ago, I was just casually sitting around. For a little more context, I lived with my parents at the time, and was a few months pregnant, which is irrelevant, but I often had naps. My parents' house was built in 2003, and we moved in after it was finished being built. We're the first people to live in that home, The neighborhood was new as well, as the area used to just be fields. As I was saying, I was just laying around the house, and my dad came up the stairs and told me an event that happened that he thought was strange. My dad isn't one to be spooked, and oftentimes recommends me horror movies or shows to watch. So he explained this to me. As he was falling asleep for his nap, he heard someone whisper his name in his ear. He said it was so clear and such a chilling voice that he sat straight up. The voice sounded female, but sounded raspy. I laughed and jokingly said maybe he was being haunted. Obviously, I was making a joke because given the history of our house, there wasn't anything that would make me think that it could be haunted. Fast forward a couple more months, and I was laying on the couch in the living room. For context, this couch is different than the one my dad was napping on, and for more context, both these couches were bought new, not used. As I was laying on the couch and falling asleep, I heard a woman whisper in my ear my name. I instantly shot up and looked to my left, which is the ear I heard the whisper in. Nothing was there. But nothing could have been there because this couch was placed against a wall, and laying on my back would have put my left side to the back of the couch. I laid back down, convincing myself that my mind was playing tricks on me, because I was in that stage of almost being asleep but still awake. Not even a minute later, I smelt something. I opened my eyes again and felt this sense of calmness. I recognized the smell. It was floral. It's so faint that it wasn't overwhelming. It took me a minute, but I realized how I recognized the scent. Once, many years ago, I was at my aunt's house and I had been playing with this scarf made up of a very thin material. My aunt ended up letting me take it home with me when my mom picked me up. I loved that thing, and I slept with it that night because it smelled just like my aunt, who I had a very close relationship with. When I woke up the next morning, I was completely covered in hives. My parents were convinced that I was allergic to the perfume that was on the scarf and took it away from me. The scent that came across me after I heard the whisper was that scent. My aunt passed away many years ago, though, before I even started high school. I'm now done with college. I actually stood up and walked around the house, trying to figure out where the scent was coming from. I never found anything. I was home alone as well, so nobody was burning any candles or spraying anything scented. I couldn't nap after this, so instead I just watched some YouTube. Nothing else happened. Fast forward to a couple months before my baby was due. I was packing my stuff up into boxes because I was moving out into my own apartment. As I was packing up my closet, I found a piece of clothing that was not mine. It was a thin white sheet, small enough to sit over my shoulders or around my neck. So thin that you could see through it like a veil. I realized that this was the scarf I thought my parents took away from me years ago. I instinctively raised it up to my face and smelt it, but it no longer smelled of my aunt's perfume. So, was the experience I just had a hypnagogic hallucination? Or was that scarf I no longer knew existed, acting as a way for my aunt to still be present? 3. About 10 months ago, I attended a business conference, really a smallish group of people working on an app. I won't say which one, but it ended up being profitable, up in Maine. It was a Monday through Friday event where we all stayed in a 10-bedroom renovated mansion by the sea that had a conference room where we worked and brainstormed ideas. My room had a mini kitchen where I could cook if I wanted, but most importantly, it had a Keurig coffee maker because I just can't face the sort of bro grammars one has to deal with without a good load of caffeine coursing through my veins. The first night after my arriving was fairly standard, with us all meeting up and our directors setting up the task ahead, and the expectation of hard days' work and some relaxing evenings for chatting and free thinking about ideas. By morning, I was craving my morning coffee, so I put the pot inside, filled the water up, and placed my cup under the spout and pressed the make button while I walked away to shower. I always make coffee while I shower because by the time my shower is done, the coffee is cooled off just perfectly. Only while I'm toweling myself off, I noticed the cup was upside down and the coffee had spilled out all over the tile floor of the kitchenette. Crap. With no time to make another one, I cleaned up the mess, get dressed, and figure I'll grab one downstairs in the conference room. The second morning, I basically do the exact same thing, paying some actual attention to the cup because I didn't want a repeat of the day before. And this is where it got weird. I came out of the shower and it had happened again. Cup was upside down and coffee was all over the floor. Now, the first morning maybe I screwed up, but I'm sure the second morning I did not. I paid very close attention. But again, cleaning up just made me late and I skipped the coffee and went downstairs. I mentioned nothing to anyone about this, but I was already starting to think something was weird about this place. So you can imagine by the third morning I'm not going to make this mistake again. Or let's say, let the weirdness happen again. So I prepare the coffee maker, but I don't take a shower. I sit there and I watch it. Nothing happens. Coffee is poured and I enjoy my coffee, even if it's a little hot, before going downstairs. But now I'm running late because of my little experiment with reality. So now I'm fairly convinced I'm just silly, and I really did screw up the first 2 mornings. But I'm still a little weirded out, so the fourth morning I decide to make the coffee without going into the shower. But I don't want to be late, so after pressing make on the machine, I start preparing my computer and bag to take downstairs, when I hear the drip, drip, drip of coffee on the floor. You guessed it, the cup was upside down again. Finally, I'm truly spooked. I look around the room for one of my asshole work friends to come out and confess to the joke. I start looking for fishing line or string to explain things, but I find nothing. The more I think about it, the more shaken I become. I can't stand the thought of showering, so I just get dressed, don't shave, and go down the stairs, leaving the coffee on the floor. About mid-morning, my boss comes over to me and makes a few jokes about my unshaven face, and suggesting I'm enjoying our relaxed evenings a bit too much by getting drunk. I laugh, but give him a look which I guess gave something away. His smile dropped, and he just came out and asked me, "Which room are you staying in?" I tell him, and he gives me a knowing nod and gives me a long, I respond with, "What is the deal with that room?" "Oh, nothing," he says. My bullshit detector explodes on the spot. At my lunch break, I find the boss and basically just push him into telling me about the room. It's obvious he knew some history, so he confesses. He has been renting this mansion for years, on and off, for events like this, and sometimes, not every time, whoever stays in that room has some kind of weird experience. Things go missing, mostly, apparently, but once or twice other guests have had very odd things happen. I think one other guest found the desk chair on top of the desk after returning after a day of work, and another could not find their luggage until it was located in another guest's room. All could be explained by people jerking around, but the big boss had heard enough to know that room was odd. Only in this room, apparently, do the tricks take place. I told the boss I didn't want to sleep in there that night, and as it was the last night with a party planned, we drank away the night, and he let me crash in his deluxe room. The privilege of being the boss. After waking up a little hungover, he asked me if I was okay returning to my room, to freshen up and get ready to leave. I tell him I'll be fine, so I return to the room to shower and get my stuff together. It wasn't until after I had showered and thought about having a coffee that I realized that even though I never cleaned up the coffee spill from the day before, the floor was clean with no coffee in sight. The cup was the right way up and under the coffee maker, but with a spent Keurig cup inside. By this time I was actually just kind of angry. I didn't know what to think. I was hungover and just wanted to go. But not before grabbing the rest of the unused Keurig cups, 3 of them as a souvenir, stuffing them in my bag and getting the hell out. My boss asked me how it was returning to the room, and I tell him how I just got even more freaked out, and I will tell him why later. To be honest, I never told him how the coffee was magically cleaned up, but I did ask him if there was any cleaning service while we stayed there. He looked at me with a smile and said, "I'm not made of money." He is, but that's another story. Anyway, me just asking that question eventually turned his face, and he knew enough. You might think the story ends there, but no. The next morning I am home and craving my usual coffee fix. Recalling my stolen Keurig cups, I put one in my machine. Proceed to make the coffee while I shower, and yes, you guessed it, my cup is upside down, and the coffee is all over the floor after my shower. I throw the rest of my stolen cups away, make a fresh cup, and actually have a bit of a laugh about it. It has not happened again in the past year. 4. I had a spooky experience a few months ago, and I think this might be the place to share it without judgment. Everyone I've told this about rationalizes that it was simply an episode of sleep paralysis, but there were too many details that didn't quite add up for me. To begin with, I will say that I have experienced sleep paralysis before, and I know what it feels like. Little demon girl in the corner of my room and getting attacked by a burglar are two instances I can think of. Whenever I wake up and realize it's happening, I usually try to move, because that will snap me out of the half-sleep state and stop any scary hallucinations from happening. However, the most jarring thing about it is how you can't move until you can. I was sleeping in my childhood bedroom while visiting my parents for the weekend, and in the middle of the night my bedroom door opens. Now, another aspect of this experience that doesn't add up for me. Our cat can open my bedroom door, which she only does when she wants to enter or leave. Because the door's latch is weak, she can actually push or pull the door open. And if she's pulling the door open, it makes a lot of noise with her scratching at the gap between the door and the floor. I went to sleep with the cat in my room, and I expected her to open the door at some point during the night to go sleep in my parents' room. But when my bedroom door opened, it was quiet. Not like the cat had clawed it open, but like someone had opened it. Then I sat up halfway in bed, looking at my open door, and the cat jumped into my bed. Why would she open the door just to come lay back down next to me? I stared into the hallway, and it looked like someone's head was poking into my room. I thought it was my dad at first, as he worked early mornings and would come say goodbye to me while I was still asleep, giving me a kiss on the forehead. However, the person at my bedroom door didn't come in, like my dad usually would. They just stood there, tilting their head. I just kept looking, trying to figure out if what I was seeing was real or just a trick of my eyes. At this point I was scared, and I laid back down, covering my head with the blankets. After a few minutes I sat back up, and the figure in the doorway was gone. I mustered up the courage to get up and close my door again, and eventually went back to sleep. Maybe I'm reading into it too much, but the cat didn't leave my room for the rest of the night. I told a bunch of my friends about this, and all of them said it must have been sleep paralysis. But there are too many unanswered questions for me to chalk it up to that. Why would the cat open my bedroom door, then come back inside to lay down with me? That's out of character for her. Why wasn't I woken by her scratching if she did open the door? I am a notoriously light sleeper. If the cat did open the door, what was that figure staring at me from the hallway? And if you're like everyone I've told this story to, you probably think it's sleep paralysis, but let me say this. I've had sleep paralysis, and I know how it feels. I can't move when it happens, and when I finally am able to move, the hallucinations go away immediately. So how was I able to sit up in bed and hallucinate some figure in my doorway for at least a minute after I sat up? Everyone says that this was an episode of sleep paralysis, but I can't shake the image of the figure's head tilting at me. Like that, like it was assessing me. 5. I remember almost nothing from my early childhood. and the few things that I do remember are undetailed and foggy. But this, what I'm about to tell you, my first paranormal experience, is the only thing I remember clearly. At least most of it. A few parts from that memory are also gone. When I was like 5 years old, my grandparents took me to a theme park-like thing. But it was mainly for families with children, so there were just mild rides and booths where you could play games, and booths with food and a playground, stuff like that. Also, it was right next to a forest. After we went around for a bit, my grandparents went to a food booth to eat and drink something, and they talked to another family they met there. I got bored and wanted to go somewhere else. My grandparents didn't want me to wander around alone, though, because I was too little. But near that booth was a playground. So my grandpa took me to that playground. He said I could stay there while they were eating and talking to that other family, if I promised I would stay on the playground and not go anywhere else. Also, there were more families with their kids, so it was pretty safe. I promised to stay there, so my grandpa went back to my grandma, and I was on the playground alone. I looked around a bit. The playground was at the edge of the theme park, on the side where the forest started. I saw that a bit into the forest there was a little house. It didn't look like a normal house where someone lives, though. It was just walls without windows and a flat roof, and one door on the left of the front side. Normally, I wouldn't really be interested in random buildings or sheds, and I would never just go into one. But that house in the forest had some special energy. I felt that I had to go in there, but I didn't know why. Something was luring me there. I had promised not to exit the playground. But I was sure that my grandparents wouldn't notice if I just went away for a few minutes, since they couldn't see me from their booth anyways. So I went off the playground to that house. I could open the door. I looked inside. It was dark. I went inside, leaned the door almost closed behind me. The room was empty. There were a few weakly shining light bulbs on the roof, so I could see barely enough to not run into the walls. From the entrance room where I stood, there was one empty hallway leading to the right. I went along it. It had a wall blocking half the left side of the way, then the right, then left again, so I had to walk a zigzag. Then I came to another room. That room didn't have bulbs on the roof anymore. There were transport boxes on one wall with strange stuff in it. These boxes were lit up a bit so I could see what was inside. But the light in the boxes was the only light. The room was completely dark. Somehow, strangely, the fact that the boxes were lit up a little still didn't light up the room the slightest. I remember that there were bones in one box, but I don't know anymore what was in the other ones. I only know that it was weird, unusual stuff. Because I was so young, that stuff scared me, so I wanted to go away from it. But I didn't see the hallway where I came from anymore. Everything was just black, so I went in the opposite direction of the boxes into the darkness. Then I hit the wall. I went along it, because I thought that I may find an exit then. Then I came to a corner. And the air felt weird there. It felt really thick, not actually like air. It was as if I touched something that had actual physical mass, but as if my body went through it. I could feel something on my skin. It felt like how you might imagine what it feels like to walk through a thick wall and stand in the wall. Then something grabbed my arm. It felt like a really big hand, but a bit different than a human hand. Different shape and proportions a bit. I was in shock, so I didn't move much from the first moment. Then I tried to touch that hand with my hand, maybe trying to pull it off me. When I touched it, it also just felt like that thick air. On my arm, I actually felt a hard grab, but there was just air. Then I tried to run away, but I couldn't get forward just one step. I mean, I could move my full body, but I couldn't move my upper arm where it was grabbed. I couldn't move away from the spot where I stood. Also, when I used my full force trying to get forward or pull my arm away, that hand that was grabbing me didn't move the slightest. Then I didn't know what to do anymore, or what could happen to me, or why. I didn't understand what was happening. So I just stood still and started crying. Then after that, there was some more really bad stuff happening, but I don't know anymore what it was. I just know that something more happened to me and that it was really bad for me. Then the next thing I remember was someone entering the room. But I think that also wasn't a human. He somehow made a bit of light. Like there was a little light around him, so that I could barely see him. He looked almost like a human, but a bit different. It looked like a man that was 30 years old, but his body shape and proportions and face looked a bit unusual for a human. Not that much off, but a bit. He came to me and looked at something that was around me, and at something that was in my direction. But he looked pretty far up, as if someone really tall was standing with me and he looked at their face. When he looked there, he had a kind of terrified face. Then he did something to that creature, but I don't remember what. Then he grabbed me by the wrist and led me away. The next thing I remember is that we were walking over a bridge that was inside the house. Then, the next thing I remember is that I'm running out of the house, crying. Then I'm running around on the theme park and I find the booth that my grandparents are still sitting in front of, still talking to the family they met. Grandpa asks me why I came back from the playground, even though I said before that I found their conversations boring. I said I was scared. My grandpa just said okay, and said that it's all good, and I don't have to be scared of anything. I can just stay with them then, if I feel better that way. He probably assumed that I was only scared because the other families went off the playground, and I was alone for too long. Later, when we were walking around the theme park again, we walked past the playground. I looked to where the house had been, but it was gone. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Paranormal Stories, episode 295. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, if you could please boop the like button and share the video with friends and family. Okay, let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is: theme parks you've never been to, and probably never will, but something about them appeals to you. I am not a big fan of theme parks. I don't really enjoy them, but I've always wanted to visit the Haunted Mansion in Disney. Any one of them, doesn't matter which one. They're all very similar. And while I'm there, I want to buy up all the Disney snacks because some of them look very, very yummy. But I'd be curious to hear what you guys think. Maybe you have more interesting answers than me, or maybe you feel the same. Maybe someday someone will do like a virtual tour. I can use my VR headset to look, and then I can go in the haunted mansion ride without actually having to go there. As for the snacks, I'm sure there's recipe books out there. I could probably make it myself if I wanted. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.